Hello and welcome to another exciting video. In this one, we'll be learning how we can create types with semigroups. Semigroups are simply a type with a concat method that are associative. So here, if I have to give you an example of semigroup, let's consider a string. So let's call it name as, and here let's call John dot concat. So you see this concat? So here John is the semigroup as it has this concat method. And now I can go ahead and add another one over here like Adams, and then I can print this saying console.log name. And now go to terminal over here. Let's close the previous ones. And I can go ahead and say node semigroup.js. And you can see that we are getting the concatenated version of first name and last name John Adams. Similarly, the same concat can be applied on other types like arrays. We have the same thing, and this can go on and on. For example, I can have concat Adams, then I can say concat, and here I can have Jerry. So this is going to give me John Adams Jerry as the output. Similarly, if I have an array, so I can say const, and let's say we have this all result, and here's a spelling mistake. So yeah, all result, and then we can have 1 comma 2, and then on this we have concat, and we can concat another array to this 3 comma 4, and then we can have another concat on top of it like 5 comma 6. And this way, if I go ahead and say console.log, the result for this will be an array. And here, let's run this. So you can see the array is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, the cool part of this semigroup is that no matter how you're adding it, the end result is going to be the same. So here, let's say we are first of all concatenating 1, 2 with 3 and 4, and then we are concatenating 5 and 6. So I can just go ahead and do it in this way as well, and the result still remains the same. So let's call it as a result equals, and this time I can go ahead and say concat these two first. So 3, 4, and then concat 5, 6, and finally concat it with 1, 2. So it's like we are adding these two first, or concatenating them first, and then we are having this prepended. So still the result remains the same. So here you can see the output still remains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the question arises, why we are calling this as semigroup? Why we are not calling it as concatable or something else? So the idea is semigroups come from abstract algebra, and so we are encoding this in our code. So we can keep the name the same and understand the laws and properties that come with this mathematical structure rather than just making something up on our own. And here we just saw, because of the algebra, we can actually concat the inner part first, like we did with 3, 4 dot concat 5, 6, and we are getting the same result after that is added to 1, 2. And this property is called associativity. And we can do the same with this string as well. So here, if you see, we have this concat Adams, then concat Jerry. I can go ahead and do this concat Adams and Jerry first, and then prepend John to it. So here, still the result remains the same. So it does not matter how we group the operations, it will always the same result. That is one property we get from semigroups. Come to think of it, addition is a semigroup, but we cannot call concat on a number just because it does not have that concat option available to us. So here, if I try doing that, you can see that red squiggly underline coming up because that's something which is not available to numbers. So what we can do, let's go ahead and make a sum semigroup. We'll define this any type over here. So within this, and what we want to write is we'll say sum of 1 concat sum of 2 to get our result of sum 3 hopefully. So here we'll have this concat method definition, that's the name, and x is the number that we have over here. So this concat will take some other sum function or sum type because we are concatting at sum 1 with a sum 2, and we'll just say we want to return a new sum, so we can go on concating. So here we can say concat and then other number, and let's make use of sum x plus o dot x over here. This is actually a sum typist. This other sum, we need to expose the x on the type, and for that we'll have to have x over here. So this is the type, and then this is the method, and here we are having this concat defined sum x plus o dot x. That's because this is a full sum type here, so we have to expose this property so we can continue to assert it here. So now let's go ahead and explore the example over here for this sum concat type that we have created as semigroup. So here we'll have our const data is equal to, and we'll have sum of 1 dot concat, and we'll again have, let's say, sum of 1. So we are adding 1 plus 1 over here, and the output, let's see, here we'll say console.log and then data. Let's save this and run this. So here you see x is coming up as 2, and then we have this concat function defined. So the value x that you see over here is being printed as the result. And that's what we are getting by concatenating these two together. Now let's go ahead and add an inspect method over here as well. And here the inspect method will just print this as we have been using it in other types. So here we'll have our sum, and we'll have the value x. So now we have added our inspect method as well. It's just printing this sum, and let's close it properly. So here we'll have it like this and save it. So I can now go ahead and call this inspect on this and save it. So here, if I go ahead and run this again, so here's a typo that I've made, and that was the error that we had over here. Now if I run this, you'll notice the value coming up over here as sum of 2. So that's all good. What we can do further is we can destructure this other sum. So instead of saying it as x over here, what we can do is we can just pass it as part of the concat method, something in this way. So instead of having this o coming up, what we can have is we can have this parameter defined, and instead of this we can have this x as another variable y, let's say, and we close this. And after this, you don't have to write it in this way. What you need to do now is just say x plus y. So now it's making more sense, like o dot x was a bit confusing. So here we have destructured the other sum, and we are now just calling it as x plus y, which makes more sense if you read it. And we are destructuring some type and just grabbing x off it and calling it a y here. It should still work. If I go ahead and save this, run it, there you go. You still get the result sum 2. Now, this was on the number. We can go ahead and create similar semigroups for Boolean types as well. For example, if I go ahead and say true and false, the result of this, we all know, is going to be false. So here you can see we are combining 2 or concatenating 2 and getting 1 as the result of it. Similarly, if I go ahead and say true, and the output of this is going to be true. So again, here also we have this concatenation going on, and this is going to yield 1 result as the output. So for this also, we can have a semi-group defined. So let's go ahead and formalize this and make a concat method on a type so that we can capture this conjunction. So what we'll do, we'll just copy this definition that we had. Let's comment this. And over here, we can paste this. And this time we'll be calling it as all. That's the type name that we are going to have. And instead of this x plus y, we will be saying and, because that's a Boolean value. So we'll have and over here for this. And the method is obviously all, so we'll have to take care of that as well. Inspect is going to have all of x. Now, that's pretty much it that we need to do. So in order to call this, we'll just copy this again from this line. We'll have it over here, line 22, and this time let's call it as Boolean data, and here we'll have all. So I can go ahead and say all of true dot concat all of false, and then we are inspecting it. So here, bool data that we have, if I go ahead and print it, now let's go ahead and run it. See, we are getting all of false. So that's also working. And if I go ahead and change this to true, save it, run it again, we're getting all of true. So let's go ahead and make one more to wrap up the semi-group discussion. We want to make a kind of odd one over here, and let's call this as first. So no matter what you are passing, the first one is the one that we will be picking up and showing up as the result. So here, let's copy this first over here. So let's have the type named as first, and this is going to have the concat method, and all it's going to do is ignore everything that has been provided to it and keep the first one only. So we are going to have first of x, and obviously the other thing we don't need over here. So we can just say first of x, and rest everything we are ignoring over here. And we have the inspect as well. Now let's copy this line, and here let's call it as first data. And here we'll have first, and then we'll pass hello, and the next one will have first, let's say world. And now if I go ahead and execute this one by consoling it in the log, by doing console.log over here, save it, run it now. See, it's always going to print the first one, hello, and the next ones will be ignored no matter how many of them you append using the concat method. So there you have it, semigroups, a type with a concat method that is associative.